Hello, welcome to Psychopath and Your Life. This is episode number 142, and I'm your host, Dianne Emerson. I'm the author of the book, Psychopaths in Our Lives, My Interviews. Today I'm going to be, I'm back. I went off to get some rest and didn't get any, and pretty deep out there. So I'd like to kind of muddle through this and see where we can go from here, because I'm not really sure what we're going to do from here. So first, a little update. You probably noticed that the channel now has this, you got to be 18 or whatever to enter. And the reason for that is because you might have seen it around here on YouTube land. The COPA laws were not being followed. Surprise, surprise. COPA means Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. And so basically, users younger than 13, there were federal laws in place by the FTC, and it said that parental consent was required before they collected data on children, and it hasn't been taking place. So they paid a big fine, and basically what they did was say, hey, it's up to you channels to manage this stuff. And the FTC said, hey, if we find any infractions, we're going to fine you $40,000 something per infraction. So, and he very cleverly said it'd be like shooting fish in a barrel. So, not sure how long we'll last here. Every day is kind of a bonus day because we've been in the corner for so long. But if anything happens to the channel, the show gets uploaded to the website, which is Psychopath in Your Life. Same as his channel. And so the shows will just continue uploading there. So if any of you have ideas for, BitChute or wherever the ideas are, I want you to hear me very carefully here. I love new ideas and I love to have conversations. But remember, it's just me, okay? So if you have ideas as far as things to do, if you could package them with some help, that'd be great. Like, if you've read a book that you think would be interesting, maybe, give us a paragraph or so in the comments section as far as why you think it's a great thing, because, I'm pretty busy, so just read this book probably isn't enough to propel me to go read that book. So, and I'm going to have to be deciding soon that I moved to YouTube to start doing this dark research into psychopaths. And the reason for that was because no research has been done about psychopaths and nobody knows how many are out there. And the research that has been done is flawed. I mean, they don't know. And instead of saying we don't know, they're misleading the public by saying only 1% in the general population. So I have fought against this for the last 20 years because it never added up to me. But it's all just been a big lie. So, we have to do research. It's never easy because first you have to do is figure out who's lying. And, we're getting it from so many angles and to assume that just because it shows up in a newspaper or a government person says it is not a reason not to think it could be a lie. Okay. Because that's probably a reason to think maybe it is a lie. And you'll understand a little bit more when I get into the spine that's going on with technology. So I had sort of thought in the beginning that while I'm doing the research, I had a decision to either go away and write about it all or do the research in real time here as I'm uncovering things. And I'm not sure I made the right decision in doing that because maybe the channel's turned into entertainment. Maybe people just tune in to see what I've uncovered, and it's not growing in any kind of everything on my channel is fair use. I mean, if you want to go do a channel and talk about psychopaths or whatever you're interested in, there's a lot of research that's going to need to be done on this trans issue and all that. So I'm probably going to start to record the shows in audio just because it's just too expensive and too hard to do video. Less than half a dozen people support the channel. So there's a reason for all that. And I'll get to that kind of at the end because it has to do with my health and things that I haven't discussed in the past. So we'll probably be doing audio, but if you ever, if the channel just isn't here, I mean, they're looking for reasons to get rid of truth tellers, okay? They pretty much have starved us out. That's working. So it's just a matter of, it's just going to be a matter of time. So if there's any confusion, just look at the website. I'm very easy to find online. So yeah, not that hard to catch up. So not going to be going to BitChute or any of those places unless we have some help. So anyway, Anyway, so they're collecting all this data, and it included everything. I mean, this COPA thing has really impacted a lot of people in a pretty dramatic way. I mean, even people who do crafts and stuff that use toys are going to get hit by this COPA thing. Fortunately, I've never used graphics, so it's not going to hit us. But it's a privately owned company, so they don't owe us any place to be here. And this is where our politicians have led us to this space of time that we're only controlled by a few people, and it's all been part of the plan from the very beginning. So, anyway, so what they did was they got caught. And so they also but you see, getting caught doesn't mean that anything happens, because what happened was that because I was trying to figure out where have we been this last year and where are we going to. Well, in 2019, the platform here was caught by the New York Times, and the New York Times did an article first, and it kind of was something happened by mistake. And what happened was that some advertisers on the platform here noticed activity in the comment section on their ads. And what it was that the pedos were time stamping the crotch shots. So these are little girls doing gymnastics and stuff. So somebody wrote about it. It got exposed. So this big article comes out as far as the advertisers bust platform here. And so that's when they had a big adpocalypse, they call them. And that took down a few of the true crime people, but nobody ever got taken down for good on that first one, except for this channel. we never made it past the February taking down. Okay. So then they got busted again in June or July. February, June, or July. And this time, the New York Times did a complete expose on exactly, they went through bit by bit by bit how all the algorithms were working to promote activities. And so what happened with that buzz? Well, I think when that buzz happened, I don't know how we had like $30 in the account at that point. When that buzz happened, they started trimming it down. And then only along that path, somewhere along there, they had a glitch in the system and they took us off the restricted list. That's the only way we got from 5,000 to 7,000 subscribers, but some glitch in the system for a little bit of time. So anyway, but then the interesting thing is I never know if these groups are fighting amongst each other. Because I don't know. I think our governments are all fighting amongst each other sometimes, because like the deal with Iran that's been going on, they said they killed the I can't pronounce it. The general, the Iranian general, okay? And the evidence was this. They said, oh, yeah, well, there was an eyewitness at the airport, and the eyewitness saw him, and he wore this ring usually. What kind of DNA evidence is that? So then the next day they come up with another story. So, yeah, if your government says something, I would suggest you double checking it, because I've always wondered as far as, and don't just tune this out, because space is a pretty program deal in this society, okay? If I were to say that I question if we went to space, a lot of people would go, their heads would explode. And as a matter of fact, somebody wrote an example that I used in a previous show, and some guy commented, goes, I'll never listen to a word you said because you're questioning space. See how you get tied into these things, right? So I've been thinking, with all these psychopaths in charge, when I left Silicon Valley, my mission was to figure out how these psychopaths got in charge. And I sort of have figured all that out during my break. I'm just not ready to go all the way there yet. But I started thinking about different angles they might use on us. And yeah, I had a little bit of time on my hands one day. But so I had been hung up in the past. I don't know if you heard me talk about this, but in the 90s, the Clintons gave our police departments all the excess military equipment. So they're all loaded with tanks and all this stuff, right? So for the longest time, I was thinking, if they're going to ever do anything, these psychopaths, they probably would come after us with the tanks and stuff, right? Well, that's a really dumb plan, because they don't need the tanks. How much food do you have in your refrigerator? I have some food in my freezer, but how long will that freezer food last if the power is cut? I mean, they're moving things. I had access to cable TV for a few days, so I was just night and day watching shows to figure out where the ads are going. And anyways, I was just observing things. And yeah, it became clear to me, because I keep wondering about all this space stuff. Everybody is always into space. And the deal with in Epstein case in New Mexico, Branson had a space place there, and all those DUMBs all around. New Mexico has just this hubbub of stuff, right? So I keep running into all this space stuff. So I was thinking about space. And then if people don't get off teams, I don't know what's going to happen because everybody in this country is mad at everybody else because either you support Trump or you like the other side. Okay. So everybody's mad at everybody. So what essentially is happening is everybody's doing the work for the elites, because if you're mad at your brother or sister because they're voting for the other side, you're basically carrying the water for the elites. Okay. So what's happening is that 2 weeks ago, space came onto my radar again. Because during the time that they're running around yelling, they're impeaching him, right? Which I'm assuming impeaching somebody you don't trust, right? So they're running around yelling, they're impeaching him. But during that same time, they actually renewed parts of the Patriot Act, which have to do with spying on us. And they also gave him close to $1 trillion for space, more money for the border wall, and something else, more money for war. So I'm thinking to myself, why'd they give money for space? Because if this is somebody you don't trust, why'd you give him money in the first place, right? But they gave him everything he wanted, okay? So I started thinking about space, and I thought, well, I don't know. It's possible that they rigged the whole moon thing. I mean, most of what we've been told is a lie, right? So then I started looking up all the NASA satellites all over the world now. So, well, if you think about it logically, how else would they get those things up there to spy on us if we didn't think it was for space? Just something to think about, okay? So anyhow, so then I started thinking, I'm seeing all these ads when I'm watching cable TV. I'm seeing all these ads for get your money faster, okay? Everything is going onto your phone, right? Everything's coming from the internet. Then you'll know why I'm going there in a minute here. So now they're pushing to get your bank account into your phone and stuff, right? I'm sure most of you do, because now they have 1 out of 3. So they're 1/3 of the way there now. So let's say the idea of getting a paycheck a few days early sounds really appealing to me, because most of us live below the poverty line in this country. So that would be probably ensnare quite a few people, right? Get your paycheck 3 days early. So I'm noticing all these ads for these apps and stuff, and it all had to do with getting your money into the bank. So then my little brain started thinking. I thought, well, you got the satellites up there. Let's say that with all this chaos, let's just imagine for a minute, okay? And then remember, these are all Hollywood people and stuff being directed by the CIA. So let's say that some night there's this big thing out of the sky, and it says, come outside, there's all this chaos in the world. I'm here to help you. How many people do you think would leave their houses? I think a lot of them would. So roundup number 1. So then how you get the rest of the people engaged? Well, nope. A lot of people don't own radios anymore. I own a radio. Do you? A lot of people have everything tied up on their phone. So let's say that one day they decide to flip that switch. Would that be that hard to do? Not really. I mean, everything is all up there and connected, and I'll show you why. So 2 decades ago, for some of you who may not know this, I worked in Silicon Valley, and I was hired by Intel in the marketing group, and I worked there from 78, 79 until an ugly lawsuit, and I left in the late 90s. And by the time I left, I had started this work, and I realized that I was surrounded by psychopaths, that I would never remain there working there any longer, and it was time to leave. And it was a very unpopular decision because, at the time, my billing rate was like $120 an hour. I mean, I got paid good money for dealing with these maniacs, but the fact was that once I figured out who they were, I wasn't able to adjust my thinking to go along with working for these people anymore. So, there are times and points that people actually do sell their soul to Satan. I mean, that really does happen in real time in cases where you get offered a really, really good deal. So they get busted. I kind of wandered off here for a minute. So the interesting thing about the bust, which I wanted off there, was the New York Times had hired a guy named Mark Thompson. Mark Thompson still runs the New York Times right now. When did they hire him? Well, they hired him out of the BBC during the Savile days. He saw nothing, right? So, yeah, so it's interesting that the New York Times is bouncing on the people here. So you got to kind of wonder, is this a turf war or what's going on here? I mean, what's that guy worried about these guys for? So I don't know. All these Illuminatis, and you need to start looking for these symbols, because that was another thing I was doing. I was studying the symbols, and I have some of them here. I'm not going to start flashing Illuminati symbols here. I don't know if you can see those or not, but anyway, so study these symbols, and you will see that just about everybody, all you have to do is go do a search for Illuminati signals. Everybody's flashing those symbols, okay? Like they say, the symbols will be their downfall. Anybody you question, just take a look. You'll find all of them flashing. I'm not going to flash any symbols here, by the way, because I don't want somebody to screenshot me flashing El Diablo. So no, so yeah, so see these symbols, and the Illuminatis, they love 3. It has to do with that. Look at the dollar bill. There's a thing on the back of the dollar bill with the eye in it. That's why you see celebrities covering an eye. You see them also using that number. They flash these things. It's fascinating. I spent a few days just doing nothing but watching people's hand signals. I mean, it's just do it for yourself and then put in the comment section. Don't take my word for it. And also, people have been misled all this time thinking there's only 1% of psychopaths out there. I never could reconcile that. And I'm not going to go too deep into it now, because what happened years ago was that there was a big lawsuit that happened. And there was some studies done in the prison population, but there were never studies done in the general population, like where the rest of us are. And so out of that prison population, they came up with this 1%. And evidently in the UK, they're saying it's 2%. So essentially what they're doing is that's been a huge lie all these years, because they never did the research. So with confidence, if a head researcher says, yep, only 1% of the public, well, what do you think that's done to a lot of people all these years? So there's ways to do things and there's ways to not do things. So by not doing the research, you have, in fact, kind of not done it, right? So you've sealed the fate of a lot of people by not doing it, because if everybody's thinking there's 1% of them and there's really a lot more of them, who's really safe, right? So my thing all these years, I've always thought there were about 25% of them in the general population, because it never made sense to me that they could have 25% in the prison and not that many out here, because really the ones out here are really just more proficient at using a pen, P-E-N, versus a gun. I don't know, the bots are picking up, a gun. So pens are easier. Pens are less bloody, right? And that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing this push toward corporate greed that's just off the charts. All these billionaires that are off the charts. So, yeah, so how did we get here? Well, we got here about being lied to about how many psychopaths are out there. And that's been my biggest challenge all these years, because people think that it's so rare, but it's really not. You know what I mean? So it leads to a lot of very harmful things in people's lives. I know for my case, when I got taken down by the psychopathic corporation, everybody just figured that I had to have played some part in it, rather than stepping back and taking a look at the overall behaviors. And really, Silicon Valley was founded on stealing ideas. I mean, don't kid yourself. I mean, Bill Gates, none of those people came up with all those ideas. What they did was they learned early on to have really fast and mean legal teams. And what a lot of people are missing in today's environment, which I'm finding really alarming, is everybody thinks they're running from the mainstream media. Well, I got news for you. The people you're running into the arms of, just because they say they're progressive or they're on the left, I looked at a lot of those people when I was off, okay? Now, I don't really know, because they use, Illuminatis use 3, and they also love 8 because it's 2 3s. Well, why would, had watched TV for a few days, okay? So I was kind of resting, and I'm watching a progressive news channel, okay? Why would they have a text to of 66866? I about shot up. I was like, what? So then I started looking into all the progressives. Yeah, guys, be careful where you're running to, okay? Because, they're out there. Okay. And I'm seeing a lot of people following a lot of QAnon people here on YouTube. QAnon is the biggest psyops out there. Okay. Don't kid yourself. They say that Trump is the savior because he's going to end child. I mean, come on. Don't kid yourself. It's another psyops. Okay. So when you're running from mainstream media, just be careful where you're running. Okay. So how this all started in Silicon Valley, lovely place that it was. I worked within a corporate building there for a couple of years, and I've never worked around more brutal people in my life. Okay. But the only reason I survived all those years as a consultant was because I didn't have to be with them all day long. You know what I mean? I knew they were vicious, but I never really knew they were psychopaths until further down the road. So let me tell you a little story. About 2 decades ago, which would have been like in the mid-90s, that was the time that I was there, the U.S. intelligence community, they worked closely with Silicon Valley in an effort to track citizens in cyberspace. That was the first goal, okay? Google is at the heart of that origin story. Some of the research that led to Google's ambitious creation was funded and coordinated by a research group established by the intelligence community to find ways to track individuals and groups online. Google, okay? Google owns this place too. They hope to direct the supercomputing revolution from the start in order to make sense of what millions of human beings did inside this digital information network. It makes it sound like they're like up there, the aliens or something. I don't believe all that icky and the aliens and lizard stuff, but yeah. But anyway, so that collaboration has made a comprehensive public-private mass surveillance state possible today. So this all happened in the mid-90s, okay? They saw this as an opportunity, okay? They saw the super community, and remember all these stories about how these people started these companies and garages. That's all a bunch of lies, okay? That's all CIA stories. If you listen to anybody who you know is like a CIA person, I mean, they're everywhere. The CIA uses all kinds of people. YouTube is flooded with these folks, okay? So yeah, they all have these interesting backstories, and these people are not smarter than us. They just use what works, okay? So in this particular little storytelling, they always have these interesting backstories, and everybody in Silicon Valley always starts in a garage, okay? But really, they started being students at Stanford, recruited by the CIA to set up companies in Silicon Valley. That's how it all really worked. So what they did was because remember back then, because I worked at Intel in late 70s, and we didn't have computers in our office, even though they made the chips. And at the time, one of the founders said that they didn't really understand at the time what computers were going to be good for. This would have been before the 90s, because they had Apple. There were computers out there before when they first became available in the home in the 90s was a big push. Should have been my first suspicion, because the phone company had a special deal that you can get a computer in your home. It's always about helping you is how these things work out. So anyway, so what they did was they saw these computers happening. But as a matter of fact, one of the founders of Intel, Gordon Moore, at the time, his famous quote was, he wasn't really sure what computers would be good for, laptops. This would have been the 80s, that he thought maybe for housewives to keep recipes on. Come a long way, baby. So yeah, so they saw it starting to come in the 70s, but by the 90s they knew they could turn this into something, okay? And that meant turn all of us into them. So, and the other thing that's just interesting is that people always, when we talk about psychopaths, people always want to overshadow their thinking with ours. And by that I mean, just because we wouldn't do something doesn't mean they wouldn't, okay? We always want to see the good in things, not how it works with them. Okay, so pretty clever plan, right? Because what they had discovered, because it had been, up until that point, supercomputers and all that had been with the, because I remember when I was there, we were doing the Ethernet thing. That was really new when they were doing all the wires and stuff. But anyway, IBM and stuff, but IBM and them hiccuped and Microsoft and them took, anyway, so so they saw these people, these universities and stuff doing all this supercomputing, Sorry, I have a dental thing in. So, intelligence gathering had been the CIA's world, and the NSA, the National Security Agency. But they came to realize that their future was likely to be profoundly shaped outside of the government. Enter Google. It was at a time when military and intelligence budgets, when Clinton were being cut back, but they weren't really being cut back. They were they always have enough money to do what they want to do. Okay, so if the intelligence community wanted to conduct mass surveillance for national security purposes, it would require cooperation between the government and the emerging supercomputing companies. So that's how we got all these handy dandy little tools, and that's why, it's interesting because they've created this world for us that either you're in it or you're out of it. And I've never hooked up my phone to Wi-Fi, and I only got rid of my flip phone because it died, and I had an old Apple on my desk at the time that my sister had sent me. So I've never been into phones, and so now it's kind of strange. It's kind of reversoing on me because I had a cell phone. I mean, God, years ago. I mean, probably in the '80s. I think it was $3,000 for a cell phone. So anyway, yeah, I would be happy with my flip phone, but I just couldn't find one. And so now, if I were to say to you, if you're going to call me a certain time, I'd say, well, I don't have my cell phone hooked up or on voicemail or whatever. People they look at me like I just grew some, so it's almost becoming abnormal like behavior not to join the crowd is how I'm seeing it. So let's get to the worst part here. This is the part that sets my hair on fire. I don't even have to think about it. Okay, let me while through this here. I spent a lot of time the last couple of months on the transgender thing, and just to lay the groundwork here, they learned really well from the pro-vaccine folks, so they're gunning after anybody who has anything to say about this subject. And to be perfectly clear, I do not care if an adult decides to have their penis cut off or a woman decides to have a mastectomy. That is none of my business. All I care about is the children. And so I started looking into how, transgenderism has been going on for a very long time, and people act like it's new. It's not new. They first started figuring out breast implants in women in Japan because the Japanese prostitutes and stuff wanted them because they felt like the Americans would like them better. So Americans have this thing for boobs and women or whatever. So transgendered folks tend to go for the boobs. If you're a, I'm not sure they're familiar. A transgendered female means that it's a man who's now a female. Okay, well, they get the boob jobs, okay? But so people get hung up on certain things. They'll say, well, that person can't be transgender because, look, they have boobs. Or, hey, that person can't be transgender. They just had a baby. Have you ever heard of those baby bumps? Have you ever seen a movie where they have movies, really, where the person's in a bikini and they look like a baby bump? So what I'm finding is people, I think there's so much of it that people are kind of looking at and thinking, no, that can't be. Just do a little homework of your own. Women were not born with the same jawlines and stuff. So things have been so molded. And I have my ideas why, and I'll get to that more later. But I first found it started getting pushed publicly by Obama. Kind of interesting. And now it's a focus of Bernie Sanders. And yeah, it's pretty scary. As a matter of fact, they're talking about getting Medicaid to approve it for children now, so that this thing will, the military, good place to get your trans surgery. So then they had the trans flag, which came out in 1999. So they have their own flag now. And it was designed by this woman, Monica Helms. And she said the colors represent male and female, and the white is for intersex people. See, they've taken this whole thing and they have developed what started out as 2 sexes, and now they have like 100 or something. So the basic bottom line for all of this, and I have other research that I've done that I'm not ready to talk about yet, but the basic bottom line is that men and women are different, okay? So I don't care if you're trans. I really could care less, but don't lie about it. Don't be a man in a dress and try to tell me how I should look as a woman. That's all I care about. Is just be honest about it. I don't care what you're doing. and get your hands off the children. So anyways, it appears to me that we're looking at about 9 years old in this country, okay? And just as a side note, have you ever looked at the doctor's logo, the snake? They're in on the eugenics deal here, okay? So this is an example of, I talked before I left as far as you can dress your boy in a dress and somebody will say he has some diagnosis. This couple, they found a therapist. They told her and her husband to fully embrace Trinity's female identity. She said that the therapist also gave strikingly blunt advice. She said, your daughter already knows who she is. Now you have to decide, putting it back on the parents, right? My guess is probably the kids in the room, but I'm feeling a little bit ticked off today. So you have to decide if you want a happy little girl or a dead little boy. They went straight from this therapist to the store and they bought this kid a pink dress and pink pajamas. And they noticed an immediate change. I guess nobody considers that children will do things to make the parents happy. So she saw the dress and she put it on immediately. And she would not take it off, they said. We never swayed in our love and support for it. Because what they're saying is love and support them. And also the other really concerning part, it was all concerning, but how are they going to unring this train? Okay, they get this thing going. They get these kids all confused. No one's doing statistics. How many of these children were raped? How many of these children are abuse victims? What kid doesn't like their body? I mean, I'm not that old. I can remember being a kid. I mean, you go through these phases. You don't want your body, but what kid should be left with these kind of decisions? So I think most of this, personally, is being egged on by the adults. And save your terror for somebody else. I'm not listening to it. All I care about is the children. So anyway, so here's what happens, okay? So you get everybody, your friends and family, everybody, you get this train rolling. So they know psychologically that it's easier to convince somebody that a lie is real than to convince that it was a lie. So how do you think this is going to work out for a kid, right? This train's rolling. So let's talk a little bit about the implications here. The puberty blockers. Some people are even actually using birth control as hormones to get access early. So people are doing all kinds of weird things here. So they're using these puberty blockers followed by cross-sex hormones, and they guarantee, known fact, okay, these children will be sterile, okay? No children for them. This is a fact that never gets disputed by any specialist. It's downplayed, and I didn't find it brought up anywhere except for in one place. So what we're really looking at here, this should really be considered a human rights abuse and not a social justice triumph for these children. But really, so what if they can sue you in the end? They're screwed, okay? They can never have kids. So also, we have the frontal lobe development. That's our thing for sound judgment. The capacity to understand and care about future consequences and impulse control is not complete until the mid-20s. Mid-20s, could be early 30s too, right? Young brains are highly plastic. It is patently obvious that when the very act of socially transitioning young children to believe they are born in the wrong body conditions them to continue on to full medical transition with all the additional risks and consequences. That's what it does. So I'm saving the worst part for the end here. So let me go through a couple other things for this year. Department of Defense didn't pass any laws to get those child porn off those government computers. Likely cops can still rape people. They pull over the roads. Ran into somebody on Twitter from Canada, and evidently in Canada, they just passed countrywide seizure laws. What that means is here, if you have cash and you're traveling through a state to another state or wherever, and a cop thinks that you're up to something, they can take that cash. Well, yeah, you can fight to get that money back. But if you're from another state and it's only a couple $1,000s, it's going to cost you over $10,000 to get an attorney to come back. See where this all starts to go? So what's happened evidently is that Canada just passed country-wide seizure laws. So it's coming out of the open now because these seizure laws have been kind of like everybody's dirty little secret around here. So yeah, so I guess we get a lot of ideas when we're growing up that this country's, a democracy and stuff, but kind of bad ideas. So they don't really need warrants to look into your computers and stuff if they've got the CIA running Google. So I'm just saying. Arizona, they nabbed over $200 million in 10 years seizing money on the highway. Now, some of it might have been drugs. I don't know. But if I was traveling like to another state to buy a car and had a couple $1,000s, that would mean the world to me. Okay. So the fact that it could just be seized, it would be okay, is kind of a big deal. We're kind of at a point in society that if we don't start caring for each other as much as we can, we have a system that's completely rigged by the elites right now. And I'm having a hard time figuring out where this is going to go, because I thought that by coming over here and recording these shows that we'd get some mobility and, people would get exposed to what's going on with children. And well, it's not turned out that way, because no one here on this platform wants me talking about what to do about a problem. But besides that, I wanted to come here to document all this, and maybe I should go away write about it. I don't know yet. And like I said, I've got some health problems, and it's coming to the point that, well, it's good. I mean, I also discovered another thing. We have these weird ideas about death and dying, and I think death would be great personally. I mean, this is kind of a hellhole down here, but so it's been interesting because people are really afraid of it. I mean, the two people in my life that, I've tried to talk to about it, they're like, oh, just get some rest. Well, I don't know. It's not a matter of rest. I mean, my system's shutting down, and it's shutting down because of abusive medical care. And that's what motivates me to be extra crazed out over what's going on with these children, because it happened to me and I wasn't given hormones. Okay. When I lost everything to the psychopaths in Silicon Valley, I was put on medication for depression and stuff. And I want to put this out there because the next part of my research, it could be possible that somebody could say, well, she was crazy, and so she was feeling depressed one day. No, I don't own a gun, but and it's impossible to shoot yourself twice in the head. But yeah, so no, so it actually to me makes it perfect, because I am not going to go down with what I know. And it's worse than I ever imagined. Okay. And I don't know. I have to think about it, and we're going to have to join the comments, because I can't do it all on my own. And I don't know. I mean, not knowing how much time you have kind of clarifies things. But I don't know, how long. But I do know that I've got to make my time worth it. And I'm certainly not going to be spending time doing things that aren't going to matter. Not that I do a lot of that anyways. I mean, if you look at the shows that I've done for the last few years, I'm not like sitting around being lazy. So I don't know. I've got to make a decision, because I don't run the world. All I can do is bring you the information. But, I can't also pay for I can't do it all. So I just don't know what to do. I thought I was going to get some rest, and I came back more horrified. So, yeah, so there's some more things I want to tell you real quick that are really, really, really important. So I don't know what to do. And I don't want to hear, it's not about anybody's sympathy. It's just a matter of, I don't want somebody to be able to say anything down the road that isn't true, because no one's going to like the other research that I started. So, and don't ever think that I'm doing anything that I don't know what I'm getting into. So, anyway, so, people are still getting raped on reservations. And accolade to that is that Obama passed a law that in some of the reservations, they might get 3 years punishment if they get that. Okay. In just a few years, every car will have GPS tracking in it. Okay. Toronto, they go smart city this year. Toronto, the entire city, smart city. You know how horrifying? I hope you guys are feeling kind of as horrified as I am, because I didn't come back feeling very rested. And here's a couple of the worst ones that I had to get through all this other stuff first for. Facebook and Apple are now doing end-to-end encryption, okay? And what they're lying about and saying is that they're scanning for child images. What they're doing is it's an open network for child porn. That's all it is. Okay, you can't convince me otherwise. California, they closed the. We always think about California. That's where I was born and raised. They always they closed the doctor exemption on vaccines. What this means is that if you live in the state of California, your doctor might have a few hundred patients, right? Well, that doctor is only going to be allowed to make exemptions to not have vaccines for like a couple, three of their patients, okay? So we put doctors really in roles of playing eugenics is what we're playing here. And so the doctors are going to clamp down that. If I don't hear people saying that they're going to be getting their kids out of school into homeschool after this show, I'm kind of at my wit's end. I don't know what I'm going to say, but Australia, one of you said, in 2019, mandated countrywide vaccines, okay? And the reason I'm saying this is because I was put on medications and not even hormones, and they tried to put me on steroids or something. But anyway, so those medications crashed my entire system. I now have a blood disorder and things that are crashing out. I mean, it's just the way it is. But they had a good 14-year run at me, okay? And so imagine being a child. My autoimmune system was fully developed at that point, okay? Imagine being a young child and having to go at your system with all those hormones and all those drugs. How long do you think these kids are going to live? What do you think their quality of life is going to be? Probably can't be very good, can it? I mean, I didn't have any bad habits. They got me, and it just took that short amount of time. So I don't know what to tell you. All I'm saying is that people better start getting those kids out of those schools because what's happening now, which is, well, it's all just hideous, is the worst is that, and that's why I need a lot of time and resources to research this stuff because there's no work being done on it. What's happening is that New Jersey, I think it's in the last 2 years, has passed a state law that if your child confides in the teacher, school or whoever at that school, that they want to be trans, and you deny that child that ability to be trans, well, they'll take your kid, number one. But what's happening is they have secrecy laws now. Now, if this doesn't ignite your hair on fire, I don't know what will. Secrecy laws in effect in New Jersey, and I don't know how many other states because I haven't gone there yet. This means that the teachers and the school and your child can keep secrets from you. So, and if you don't go along with the secrets, they can get you in contempt for denying your child their rights. See how they can deny your child their rights, but they could also get you to deny their child their rights by abusive surgery. See what I'm saying? So they can use this one law to protect the child's rights, while on the other, anyway, if you figure that one out, you let me know. So, yeah, so I don't know what to tell you. I don't know if I should go back to just writing about this. I can't spend another year in the red. Now everybody here, I can't get any benefits because they think that I'm making money somewhere. So I don't know. And when I asked for help, I didn't ask for help until like this last year. And I got such a weird response from people. I'll never trust you. You're asking for money. Well, I just want to clarify. That was why I was asking for money, because I've lost all my benefits by doing this work, because I guess people don't do things for free anymore. And when the state looked at what they're doing as part of their process now is doing reviews based on social media. And I'm obviously visible on social media. So I tried to explain to them that I'm visible on social media, but I don't have hidden accounts. And they didn't understand that, because what they said to me was, who puts in that kind of work without getting paid? So anyhow, so do what you can do. I don't know if I know we're going to be doing audio from now on. Find me at the website. I don't know what else to say, but I'll be around, and be safe out there. I'll chat with you soon. Bye for now.